Hi, want to let you know this is a public service announcement that no billionaires were harmed in the making of this video. And for the record, being butthurt doesn't count.
So, Chuchi Pie, you want to know if you will be a billionaire. Well, that's the question we all want to know, right? Okay, so today we are doing the chart of Jeff Bezos, the CEO and founder of the, what is the word they use? The juggernaut of industry, Amazon.com. So, a couple of things before we get started that you should be aware of. One, we do not have a birth time. So, the houses and the house positions of these planets do not count. They're literally just set up here with 0 Aries rising on the chart because I need someplace to put them so I can look at it. And so you can look at it too. The other thing is because the moon is at such a late degree, it is at 28 Sag in his chart at noon. Depending on how late in the day or evening he actually was born, it is entirely possible, and also the speed of the moon, it is entirely possible that that moon is at 0 Cap. Rather than 28 Sag. I think it is a 28 Sag. And from all reports about his personality and behavior, he's definitely the moon in Sag. But, without an accurate birth time, we don't know. And the final thing is that with this, without a birth time, there are great chunks of information that we're not able to access because we don't know where these things are actually sitting. So there is a level of specificity in this chart that we do not have. So I'm not going to go through and piecemeal this chart together. I'm going to read this chart straight like I would normally read it. And it's up to you guys to try and keep up and follow along. If you get confused, you have questions, you can always put them in the comment section later, and I'll try to address them when I have time. But we're going to do this like we do everything here at Ms. Jenny's table. Quick, fast, and dirty, baby. Okay, so the first thing that we should know, looking at Jeff Bezos as a person, is he has a Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn. Now, this is a wide conjunction, so we've got 8 degrees separating this, but the sun is the sun. And so we give it a much larger orb. So that Mars industriousness and need to move, physically move, and energy, because that's what Mars rules, is lending itself much more immediately and urgently to the sun. So Jeff's identity is all hooked into Capricorn and this Mars type of energy. What we would look for in this particular case, somebody who sees themselves as a competitor, someone who sees themselves as very industrious and needs to be industrious, because honestly, between you and me, Mars and Capricorn, oh my Lord. Mars is your energy and your temper and how you express irritation and your physical activity and all that sort, and your sex drive and all sorts of fun stuff. There's multiple things that are covered under the planet Mars and its rulerships. The thing about it is, Mars placements will also tell people or show the style with which you tend to express your irritation when you're literally spinning your wheels. So I'll give you an example, right? Mars in Virgo. You do not ever want a Mars in Virgo that does not have a project to work on or work to do because, oh my God. Listen, let me tell you something. Mars in Virgo, if they don't have meaningful projects to work on and things to fix and things to put into order and make right with the world again, they will look for things to do. And typically the things that they look for to work on, to improve and make better, becomes whatever is in front of them, which is usually you. Anybody who's been with anyone who has Mars and Virgo knows exactly what it's like to have to deal with this. Oh my God. You don't want to be a project for Virgo. Oh my God. Now, Mars and Capricorn is similar, except that with Mars and Virgo, there's a lot of critiquing and criticizing and helpful hints to help you improve. With Mars and Capricorn, on the other hand, if they don't have enough meaningful work to do, if they're not actively working towards a goal, if you don't keep their behinds busy, literally broken tired, what is it, women should be barefoot and pregnant, men should be broken tired. The broken tired phrase definitely applies to them, because if they are not, they can be complete major D-bags. And if you don't know what a D-bag is, I'm not going to tell you. You can probably ask your kids and they'll tell you. They're not pleasant. They are not pleasant. They will be mean. They will be rude. They will be condescending. And if they criticize, it's not because they're trying to improve you. They're just going to criticize you because they feel like you deserve it. And all sorts of not okay things. Oh my God. Literally, they will make you want to shove a potato down their throat to shut them up. Because they're just mean. Mean. So with a Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn like this, even though it's wide, we're still feeling it. So that Mars in Capricorn with the Sun in Capricorn, when he feels like he's spinning his wheels and he's not moving in a positive forward-going direction that fulfills his ambitions to be God, Emperor, King of the universe. And secretly, all Capricorns believe that they should be in charge of the universe because nobody knows better than they do how to run an organization as far as they're concerned. So if he feels like he's spinning his wheels and he's not moving in that direction, he can be mightily unpleasant to have to spend time around. Because on top of everything else, he's competitive. So everything is about being better than you are. That being the first at it, being the best at it. No. 2 out of 3. We'll do 2 out of 3. And also that Moon in Sagittarius, it's a fire sign and they are competitive. Sagittarius loves games and loves races and contests because it's a fire sign. So the two together, Sun Mars conjunction in Capricorn and that Moon in Sag, whee, honey, you've got to give him plenty of room to run, and you need to point him in a direction and literally get out of his way because he will trample you psychologically or emotionally if you've got him tied to a post and he can't move forward with his plans, ambitions, visions, goals, whatever it is he's got on the table this week. The other thing with Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn like this, and the Moon in Sagittarius together, is this is somebody who would necessarily have a very idealistic vision, you ready, of themselves. So I know that sounds awful. But really what we're talking about is somebody who has an image of themselves, who they need to be, because the Sun, Mars, Capricorn is very much about tradition and honor and respectability and engendering respect from the world around them. Respect and being respect worthy is very important to them. And this coupled with this Moon in Sag, which is very idealistic and optimistic, and they've got these grand visions because they're constantly living in the future. This particular combination has an idea of who they are and who they want to be at every stage of their life. And I can guarantee you with this particular combination, and also with that Mercury in Capricorn retrograde, they've got mile markers that they have established for themselves. So literally they operate on a timeline. By this age I will do this, and by that age I will do that, and by the time I get here and I accomplish this, I'll have that to show for it. It's all very systematic. Well, maybe not completely systematic, but definitely they've got mile markers and the timelines that they're following that they feel like they need to have achieved and conquered, moved forward from. So if they're not moving on that trajectory, they can be mightily difficult to deal with. Now, what's interesting about this particular combination is that it will vacillate between being incredibly stingy. And listen, Capricorns, you all know that you hate sharing your money and you hate giving stuff away just to give it away, and you hate waste. So the idea of being Santa Claus and just giving people stuff because you can give it to them literally makes you break out in hives. What? Wait, what? What do you mean they're not earning this? Oh my God, what? Like, I can hear you guys all having heart palpitations now, right? But this Moon in Sagittarius, this big, generous Santa Claus position, Moon in Sagittarius loves making people happy and seeing people laugh and smile. And it's very generous by its nature. It's not petty. The Moon in Sagittarius is not petty. This isn't to say that they can't be, and many of them can be and frequently are. But the Moon in Sagittarius, as a rule, is very high-minded and really grooves on higher principles and really enjoys seeing people like get lifted, be supported, and throwing their support behind them. So this is somebody who's going to vacillate between acting like Santa Claus and Scrooge, sometimes at the same time, as if that were possible. I can't even begin to imagine how this plays out in real life, but I bet it's wildly entertaining for the onlookers and incredibly difficult to deal with some days for the people who have to actually live with him. Okay. Now, the other thing that you should know with this Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn and this Moon in Sagittarius, right? And remember, disregard the houses because we don't know where any of that is, all right? So, the people are complaining. This particular combination lends itself, are you ready, to being dun, 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 bossy. Imagine that. Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn. Capricorn by in and of itself, but certainly Sun-Mars conjunction in Capricorn lends itself to executive or managerial ability. They enjoy telling other people what to do and giving them work to do and delegating. That's the word with Capricorn, delegating. They love delegating things to other people because, you know, in their mind, they are the CEO, chief, king, God, ruler of the universe. We just haven't figured that out yet. And coupled with the Moon in Sagittarius, this gives you somebody who's really long on vision, very short on patience when it comes to actually doing the work. So the tedious work, the daily nonsense, right? Where is everything? Sorry. The little persnickety stuff that you would give to an underling, like a secretary or an assistant or somebody else. They want other people to do that because they literally don't have the patience for that. So the sooner they can get the stupid, in their mind, the stupid stuff, right, the grunt work off their table and give it to somebody else so they can move on with their plans and their big visions, the happier they are. So naturally, this lends itself to somebody who is more of an executive than a worker. So not a worker bee, definitely, a managerial bee. Okay. Now, with that, there are some interesting things here. So one of the things that we know, the little bit that we know, remember, we're limited to the information we get through media, is that, you know, Jeff and Amazon they're literally almost one and the same. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. And innovation, along with enterprise and streamlining and really kind of leading the pack in terms of changes, is what they're known for. So we would look for a lot more Uranus in this chart than we're necessarily seeing. So one of the things we look at when we look at, you know, mental acumen and how we think, right, is here, Mercury. So Mercury in Capricorn by itself tends to be much more practical and step-by-step and methodical and very systematic, which lends itself perfectly to computers and software programming, which I believe he not only has an extensive background in, but he has a number of high honors from his academic career, from his performance in those fields, because Mercury and Capricorn absolutely makes total sense to them. You know, they take to it like a duck to water. Now, with Mercury Capricorn retrograde, with Mercury retrograde in any sign, what you're going to have is somebody who is a deeper thinker. This is somebody who's constantly taking a little longer to digest information, who's constantly looking at the underlying reasons for things, who's constantly looking past the surface and investigating what's really going on under the hood. They want to know how the engine works. And this is with everything. So with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, this is somebody who would necessarily be more inclined to problem solving and looking for problems that we weren't paying attention to and fixing them. So this is not somebody who takes things for granted. And I would have expected with this particular aspect that he would have been more involved in troubleshooting. And maybe he was, I don't know. I'm not a computer person, so it's entirely possible that he spent a good deal of his career troubleshooting systems and networks and things and processes, you know, either on a social level, you know, the executive manager here, or in actual software applications and stuff like that, which is what I believe his major in college was. So, but I don't know. Maybe somebody else can clarify that for me, right? Now, again, back to the idea of innovation and enterprise. So where's the ingenious part here? Where's the innovation? Like, where's that coming from? Because that certainly doesn't sound like Mercury in Capricorn. Well, if you look, right, that Mercury in Capricorn retrograde makes an exact trine, well, not exact, but a close trine to Uranus and Virgo. This whole generation, the Uranus and Pluto and Virgo generation, this whole generation, their whole trip this time around has very much been about improving systems and processes that already exist and making them better. Unfortunately, One of the other things that we know with this generation is many of them came in with a Saturn opposition, because this generation was born on the heels of the Vietnam War ending. So there are many people out of this generation who came through that were part of the generation that were the first wave of mass divorces in history, and certainly around here. And also dealing with extremely dysfunctional family situations, because we had broken parents coming back from the war who were really struggling to find their place again, and to sort themselves out. A lot of very, very psychologically broken people coming home from Vietnam, trying to assimilate back into regular society. And a lot of children, unfortunately, had to live through those circumstances. So for many people in this particular generation, this whole trip in this lifetime has been about healing those broken parts from all of those events. And for those people who were lucky enough to have come from stable environments with the least amount of pressures and toxic influences, because that was also, we had this civil rights movement, we had desegregation busing, we had so much crap going on. If you were lucky enough to have some distance from that, then you also would be better situated to engage and utilize this Uranian at Virgo energy, which basically goes in, fixes and cleans up and repairs and improves things. For everybody else, it's been a whole lot of other stuff on the plate before we could get there. So I'm not going to knock that generation for not accomplishing more as a generation. They're doing a tremendous amount, but their work has a lot more to do with healing both themselves and the people around them. So given what they were handed as kids, you can't hold it against them that they're not all out, knocking out Pulitzer Prizes and Nobel Peace Prizes. So a lot of the most important work we do is here at ground zero on the day-to-day life scale. So don't ever underestimate the value of your participation in life, even on the smallest levels. Okay. All right. So now we've done all of that. Now let's look. So we've got Venus and Saturn. No, you know what? That's pretty juicy. I'm going to come back to that. So let's look at this Jupiter and Aries. So in this chart, we have a fairly dry, rational, sort of conservative chart. There's a little bit of the, woohoo, loopy stuff because we've got Venus and Saturn in Aquarius. But here, what's interesting is this Jupiter in Aries, right? At 12 Aries, there's at 12 degrees. So this lunar eclipse we're under today, he's should be receiving some benefit from. So there should be something really, really good coming out of this eclipse over the next 6 months to 2 years. That's really going to be a huge benefit and uplifting thing for him. But separate from that, Jupiter in his natal chart isn't really making a lot of aspects. In fact, it's not really making any aspects except maybe a wide square to his Mercury. I wouldn't even use that, and a square to the South Node, which I still wouldn't use. So technically what this is, they call this an unaspected planet, which is a lot like having a runaway train. So there's this part of him that pops up periodically like a little devil with a pitchfork and kicks in and kind of takes over and everything, right? So with Jupiter in Aries, what you have is this, and unaspected, what you have is this periodic need or desire to kind of get out and do daredevil stuff, like go have adventures, like they literally getting a wild hair up your backside and saying, yep, let's go to, I don't know, my son is Jupiter in Aries. No, let's go to Mongolia for 3 months. What? The Jupiter and Aries will do that. They like adventure. They like challenges. They like confrontation, but not in a hostile way. They like that pushback, that back and forth kind of, contest. They like contest. So Jupiter in Aries frequently, especially when it's unaspected, will lend itself to these unexpected moments of just sheer, not rebellion, but definitely adventure seeking. And it just comes completely out of the blue, which is completely not what you would expect from somebody with all this Capricorn and Saturn in their chart. Like, for the most part, with the Sun and Mars and Mercury in Capricorn, and Venus conjunct Saturn, which is Capricorn's planet, and then these trines to Uranus, Pluto, and Virgo. This describes somebody who's kind of a stick in the mud, a big old fuddy-duddy, right? But there's that Jupiter in Aries, like that little, like devils and angels, like that little devil with a pitchfork that periodically appears and, kind of sticks the pitchfork up his butt and says, dude, let's go do something already. So I bet he is quite entertaining when he decides to go off on his little wild goose chases, as it were. Okay, now we have Venus and Saturn, and this is what's really interesting about this chart. So there are many things, but this is pretty interesting. So Venus and Saturn are together in Aquarius. Venus and Saturn together can be challenging because it tends to make people more suspicious, more cynical, a lot more guarded, a lot more conservative, and just generally not very warm, effusive people. Chilly might be the better word to describe it. So, and we're back to this Capricorn thing about earning, so Venus and Saturn together feels like that, these things should be earned, love should be earned, dedication should be earned. And there's, there is some merit to that, but they tend to go too far with it. They make great slaves. That's a whole other conversation. So Venus and Saturn tends to be a little chilly in its affection. It's not very emotive. And also too, combined with Aquarius, they're hyper rational. Oh my Lord. So everything is about the mind and think and thought and ideas and, what do you mean by that exactly? And they really have a hard time with people who are emotive or emotional. And it's not necessarily, in this particular case, because it's Aquarius, it's not necessarily they're having a hard time because they don't like, let me find a way to say this. So Venus, Saturn conjunct Aquarius tends to have a hard time with people who are overly emotive because they tend to find a lot of humor, especially with that moon and Sag. They tend to find a lot of humor in people's over-the-top sort of emotional diarrhea. For them, it's a bit entertaining because they just don't get it. They're almost like robots. Like, okay, I understand that you're having a feeling now, but could you tell me what's wrong? So this hyper rational sort of stuff, they're fun to hang out with, but God knows I wouldn't want to be involved with somebody like this because literally you would not be allowed to be a human being with feelings because feelings are messy and they're inefficient, and Venus and Saturn is all about efficiency. And Venus and Saturn in Aquarius is all about hyper rationality and let's be reasonable here. They're like cold-blooded fish. So they can be, with Saturn in Aquarius in particular, they can be, depending on how evolved they can be fountains of wisdom because they are very intelligent and they read a lot and they have the ability to not let their feelings interfere with their thought processes. Some people would say because they don't actually have any feelings, but that's again another conversation. So their ability to be objective and rational is tremendously valuable, but it can also be a handicap because feelings and human needs and all that sort of stuff is what makes relationships work. And those things have just as much value. So with Venus and Saturn in Aquarius, sometimes you get people who are so dismissive of people who are not as cool and intellectually oriented as they are, that they can be snobs, right? Which is the other thing with this particular combination. So with Venus and Saturn in Aquarius, you're going to get somebody who can be an intellectual snob. They're attracted to smart people. They're what they call sapiosexuals. They're attracted to your brain, and not in a Jeffrey Dahmer sort of way. They're attracted to your brain, your intellect, how you think, like what's under that hood, what kind of intellectual horsepower are you working with? That's what they're attracted to. Everything else, obviously, they're still humans. They're attracted to that stuff too, but listen, if you're a dummy, they got no time for you because, yeah, you look nice, but Jesus, every time you open your mouth, I just want to cry. So they can be a little snobbish, intellectually snobbish that way, which, and also, coupled with that Sun, Mars, and Capricorn, not that doesn't help. That compounds it even worse. And then that Moon in Sagittarius makes them a little bit elitist. So there's a strong vein, and would have been there from very early on, of being better than that, whatever that is, or being better than those people, whoever those people are. And it's not these things where it comes from a thing of insecurity. Like, they really believe that. And it may be true in some ways, but they tend to they can go a little too far with that. Venus and Saturn together in Aquarius will also give you somebody who's just different. They're just weird. And I don't like using the word weird because people accuse me of being weird all the time. But when we say weird, what we're really saying is, I don't understand you. I have no frame of reference to put you in that's going to help me make sense of you. You make no sense to me. That's really what we're saying when we're saying somebody's weird. So they've always been accused of being weird. And they know that about themselves. And they probably often feel like they're robots or space aliens or like starseed. Like, they literally never really quite feel like they're like everybody else. Kind of like a sociopath. It's kind of going through the motions, but they're not really feeling it. They're just doing it because this is what's expected of them. So, and some of this too may be compounded by the fact that if you have somebody who's very bright, this will also lend itself to a feelings of not quite fitting in. Although with Venus and Saturn in Aquarius, it's typically not fitting in whatever environment they originally found themselves growing up in. And these things have a huge impact on us later on in how we perceive the world. So there's that feeling of not being like other people. And also there's more than a little, because Saturn is so suspicious. There's more than a little bit of suspicion and cynicism as far as relationships go and what people want and their motivations for doing things or wanting to be with you, especially with Venus and Saturn there too. So there's more than a little suspicion and cynicism about why anybody would want to get close to you, because it's like, really, is it really, like, what else is going on here? I know I'm a little weird, so why are you here? Which isn't to say that they're seeing themselves as weird in a bad way. It just means that I know I'm different and you're not like me, so why are you here again, right? That kind of thinking. People with this aspect will understand exactly what I'm talking about. So Venus is also what we're attracted to, right? So on a personal level, and I'm not going to get too deeply into this because even though he is a public figure, the man does have a family that does not need to hear all the salient details of speculation based on his chart. So there's a whole lot of stuff here that is visible when we look at an astrology chart that I'm not going to get into. I know, and you're all going, wait, now you have to tell me. What I will say is that at the end of the day, it would all be speculation. So unless we personally live with this man and we can validate and verify that these speculations are accurate, there's no need to get into stuff like that. So I'm only saying this because I'm trying to get past that thinking process, because I'm about to blurt out a bunch of stuff I shouldn't say out on the air. Now, with Venus and Saturn together in Aquarius, Venus is what we're attracted to. So one of the things that you'll find with everyone who has Venus in Aquarius is that what they're really looking for is they're looking for a buddy. Like, they're looking for someone they can be friends with, someone they can share interests with, someone that they feel intellectually compatible with, somebody that they can be friends with. Like, the whole romance thing is nice and the sex thing is nice. All of these things are nice, but that's not really what they groove to. And they're kind of suspicious of it, because it's all so messy and emotional and irrational. And in this case, coupled with Saturn, oh my God, like, you get all kinds of, oh, you're my soulmate. And he's literally going to run for the hills because he's going to think you're either psychotic or you're lying. He is not the one. He is not the one. So essentially, he would be looking for a companion, a friend, somebody who he can be friends with, intellectually first and always. The other thing is, with Venus and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, he needs lots of space to breathe. He does not like clingy and needy. He can't deal with emotional dead weight, and the whole maudlin, like, woo, oh my God. Literally, the fastest way to get him out of the room is to start crying, because it's not that he doesn't technically know what to do or how to respond. It's just that it's so awkward for him and he's not even really sure if it's effective. And, can't we just talk about this? And he knows he's not good. People with this aspect know they're not good with weepy, crying, like emotional, high drama people. So they will, to avoid awkward conversations, they will literally cut bait and run first chance they get and let somebody else deal with that mess. Now, because Venus and Saturn is in sextile to that moon in Sagittarius, even if the moon moves forward or backward a couple of degrees, this is still active, this sextile. This further reinforces this need for space and breathing room and some room to run. He does not want a clinging ivy hanging on to him. He wants someone he can go do things with, and yeah, space, needs a little space and running room, needs a little leg room, needs to occasionally get out of the gate once in a while. And that will be the end of that portion of the conversation. Okay, so now also, if you look, we've got Venus and Saturn here, and look at that, it's squaring Neptune, right? So, one of the challenges that comes up with this is the inability to read people correctly. And they know this about themselves. They tend to be, because remember we talked about Neptune in the video about the eclipse happening right now, January 31st, 2018. And we talk about how Neptune sees the potential in you, which can often be difficult to reconcile with the reality of you. And this is kind of who he is. And remember, he's got that moon in Sagittarius, so he's very generous in his opinions. He doesn't like to see the bad stuff in people. He's very optimistic and positive, in spite of his cynical Capricorn ways and Venus-Saturn conjunction, right? So he's very optimistic and positive about you, unless it's a deep, intimate, romantic relationship, at which point he's all kinds of suspicion and skepticism. So anyway, Venus square Neptune. The same goes for friendship too, but it's usually more obvious in personal relationships. Anyway, so Venus-Neptune square, they have some challenges seeing people clearly because they see what people are, what their potentials are, which doesn't always jive with the realities of who they are. And that leads to some problems, because people can be very selfish and self-serving and take advantage of those blind spots. Because, Jesus, some people never evolve. We've been here how many billions of years and they still can't get it right. So there's that. And then also Saturn squaring Neptune, there's a lot of insecurity and a lot of concern and a lot of fear. And remember, with Saturn, it's always justified. It doesn't look justified to us, but it's justified to them. The thing to remember about fear and pain is that it doesn't matter how you feel about it. And to you, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. And that shouldn't hurt because you don't experience it that way. But this is not about your experience. So other people and their fear and their pain is real and is valid. And it's not your place to determine how real or not real it is. If they're experiencing it, it's real and it deserves that level of respect and consideration for what it is. So with that said, Saturn squaring Neptune, there's a lot of fear and concern, and more than a little suspicion, about, because it's pulling in Venus, about relationships and intimacy and people's motivations, right? Because there's also Scorpio involved. So there's a little bit of difficulty understanding like what's really happening, at any given day, which is also, in this case, luckily, because of all those Aquarius planets, why it benefits this person to be hyper rational, because at least if you can live in your head, you can get a better handle on what's going on without like spilling your guts all over the table because you weren't paying attention. Now, the positive side of this is that Saturn Neptune square, there's the ability. The downside is that there's a propensity to trust the wrong people. On the upside, there is the ability to build concrete things out of visions and imagination. So if you were looking for somebody who were going to build something and make something out of nothing, this is the person who would be capable of doing it, because with the fixed signs involved here, Aquarius and Scorpio, once they've committed themselves to the action, they will commit themselves to the action until there's nowhere further to go with it. They will run it the course. And if you're going to accomplish anything in life, you have to be able to run the course. You don't get to stop halfway and said it was a failure. You didn't finish the job. So how would you know? So this is the chart of Jeff Bezos. Now, the other thing I want to point out that I thought was kind of interesting. So this eclipse, remember, when we talked about these eclipses, there's a strong Neptune theme going on, right? And the Neptune at 12 Pisces in the eclipse chart is very, very key in terms of how this eclipse is impacting us moving forward. Look at where his Chiron is. Look at that. So disregard the house because we don't actually know what house it's falling in. What we do know is that his natal Chiron is at the degree of Neptune right now, and it is absolutely functional and focal in the lunar eclipse path that we're going to be dealing with for the next 6 months to 2 years. So whatever this lunar eclipse is bringing him is huge, huge, and very, very deeply personal to him. So the thing with Chiron is Chiron represents the places, it's kind of like a catch-20, a spiritual catch-22, right? So Chiron is the place where we give to get. So Chiron shows where, if we choose to, facilitate the healing and empowerment of other people in this area, we also give ourselves the ability to start healing and moving past those sticking parts in ourselves. As an example, if Chiron is in your second house of resources, movable resources, money, and income earned, right? This means that in your lifetime, over and over and over again, there will be repeated situations where the most sensitive, vulnerable part of you has a lot to do with your ability to make money or have resources or have financial security and your self-esteem that results from that. This will be so intimately, intrinsically tied together, they'll be almost inseparable, and it will be a lifelong thing that you struggle with, or at least struggle to understand. But with a second house Chiron, if you were to give to other people so that you could get, so if you were to give people the tools and resources and skills and knowledge that they needed to empower themselves to make better use of their personal resources, to be able to make money for themselves, to be able to create financial security for themselves, all those things that you feel like you're not able to kind of keep a grasp on, the more you're able to facilitate this for other people, the more you're able to heal those issues in your own life, right? So, and another example, if you had Chiron in the 7th house, which is particularly tricky because the 7th house is about relationships or other people. So Chiron in the 7th is very much about autonomy versus codependency. So relationships are everything in life, which is why this is such a complicated position, because you can't not have relationships unless you're living in a cave on a mountaintop somewhere with a goat, right? And even then you're having a relationship with the goat. So Chiron in the 7th is very much about relationships and me versus us, how much of this is you and how much is this me, learning to compromise and find equitable footing in a relationship without giving up your identity or having the other person give up their identity. These are huge crosses that have to be borne and worked through with Chiron in the 7th. But if the person with Chiron in the 7th assists and participates and facilitates the empowerment of other people to find equitable distribution of power in their relationships, to find equal footing, to be able to have a healthy self-identity inside a relationship with another person where there's room for compromise and breathing room, everybody can be themselves, all those things, that's when that 7th house Chiron can begin to heal itself. Okay? So, unfortunately, we don't know where in his chart his Chiron is falling. What we do know is that this eclipse and that active Neptune in the eclipse is bang on his Chiron. So there's some really important stuff happening right now, and we're not completely sure what that is. So, and unless it hits the media, we may never know. But I thought that was interesting. All right, so that is our chart for Jeff Bezos. Now, you may be looking at this going, but wait, so where's the part where he's going to be a billionaire? It's got to be in there somewhere, right? You can't use that because that's the ascendant. Well, so here's the thing. Without an ascendant and a midheaven, we don't really see anything. I mean, it's entirely possible that, oh, geez, come back here. It's entirely possible that these things are here. Oh, wrong one. There we go. On the angles, and we're just not seeing it because we don't have those angles. So any fixed stars or sensitive degrees that are here are actually showing more of an interest in justice and social progress and social causes. This is actually, for all intents and purposes, looking at this chart, because you have Cos Borealis right here. You can't see that. Come here. There we go. Cos Borealis, right? And then we've got Vesta conjunct Mercury. Okay, those two things by themselves lends itself to somebody who's geared or oriented and certainly focused on social justice issues. So I'm very surprised that this is somebody who did not go into law or did not go into something where they're more actively advocating for other people and trying to bring social order on a larger humanitarian level back into place. However, it appears that this is something that is very personal and meaningful to him. So these things are operative in his psyche. We're just not necessarily seeing it as his business venture. Although yesterday, January 30th, there was an announcement that Bezos, Warren Buffett, and Jamie Dimon are all coming together to work on creating an insurance program that is not profit driven, specifically to improve the benefits and delivery of services and also reduce the costs of medical insurance for starting with their employees and hopefully moving forward to the rest of the world, as it were. So that in and of itself is an indication of somebody who cares about people and humanity as a whole, in spite of their business practices, which seem to be all about putting us in a position to just kind of like become Amazon consumer slaves. So I mention this because here's the important thing. If you look at your chart, right, and you do not see any specific indications that you will be wealthy in this lifetime, do not despair or panic. That does not mean it cannot happen. Little sidebar, one of the things that's interesting is, there's this story that they like to float around the internet about how, little Jeffy started this business in his garage, with his wife. Together they worked and, built this multi-billion-dollar empire out of their home. And it's this beautiful story that sounds so modest and humble, and it's so not an accurate reflection of what happened. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, it's on the internet. You can find it out there, which is where I got it, because I'm certainly not that much of a genius. Jeff Bezos was the vice president at a financial firm when he decided to start this company. And he had actually gone to his bosses and made a suggestion about something, getting involved in something like this, to which they said, no, that's okay. We'll do just fine without it. Financial firms, as a rule, tend to be Capricorn, Scorpio. So they're very conservative and extremely risk averse. So they're not big on taking chances. They're all about taking your money, but they're not big on taking chances, which is kind of good if you're taking my money. I'm okay with that. Anyway. So his wife met him. She worked at the company with him and she met him there. And apparently she asked him out and they dated and they were married 6 months later. And he brought it up to her and she was very supportive, encouraged, like, you should just do this yourself. You should just do this. You can do this. So together in their upper middle class home, or their upper class home, since he's vice president of a company, he's an executive, they started their company out of a garage, and he actively sought out investors for the business to get it off the ground. In this particular case, he was looking for people who were able to invest a couple million, into the thing. So he started with more than a few million to get this business off the ground. By virtue of the fact that he knew these people. And then, of course, now it's $1 billion company. So all I'm saying is it's not the same thing when you start off with a couple million as an investment to build $1 billion company as compared to like the folks who have, I don't know the name of the company, a multi-million dollar publishing house. And they literally started by selling paperbacks, original author paperbacks out of the trunk of their car in poor urban neighborhoods because publishers would not talk to them. They did not believe there was a market for that kind of writing, so they wouldn't have anything to do with them. So they were self-publishing and selling out of the back of their car, and now they run a multi-million dollar publishing house. That's a much, much bigger accomplishment. So you may not have a lot of resources to work with, and you may not have these aspects for wealth in your chart. That does not mean that it will not happen. Everything that is Jeff Bezos being a billionaire is literally because of Amazon. So Amazon is the vehicle for this wealth, not necessarily Jeff Bezos himself. So if you look at your own chart and you're not seeing wealth signatures in there, do not panic. If you want this bad enough and you plant a seed for something that is needed and improves something, right now you can accomplish it. Okay, but you got to want it and you've got to be serious about it. So that is it, my lovelies.
If you enjoyed that, please like, subscribe, share, and definitely take a look at all of the other video offerings that we have on the channel. The channel is evolving and growing, so I am open to suggestions. So if there's something you'd like to see more of, please, by all means, let me know.